Die Rise is one of the most criminally underrated Call of Duty Zombies maps ever made, and I'm here to tell you why. It's generally regarded as one of, if not the worst zombies maps ever made, at least it was a couple years ago in a lot of people's rankings on YouTube. And if the public opinion on Die Rise has changed recently, I'm just simply not aware of it because I haven't really kept up with zombies on YouTube in the last couple of years, like after Cold War pretty much, because every game after Cold War has been a big steaming pile of crap in my opinion, but that is a topic for another day. But I'm here to convince you today that Die Rise isn't a bad map at all, and tell you why it's actually one of my favorite maps ever made. First off, we have the setting for the map, which is one of my personal favorites. It's two towering skyscrapers in apocalyptic Shanghai. But the taller tower is broken in half, and the top half is fallen, so it's like an upside-down third tower pretty much. Now, I've always been a fan of skyscrapers in zombie media. I know it sounds pretty niche, but they've always just been a really cool locale for that type of setting. An example that comes to mind is the first Dying Light game, where basically every big group of survivors in that game was based up at a skyscraper. Far Cry 5's zombie DLC also had a mission that was in a similar setting to this. And you can't honestly expect to be able to convince me that Die Hard with zombies wouldn't be the coolest thing ever. Even considering that Die Rise is set inside of two skyscrapers, you have a good variety of locations within those skyscrapers that keep it feeling fresh. The spawn tower's almost got kind of a shopping mall vibe. There's a lot of shuttered shops, there's a food court, there's like the hotel lobby that you start off in. It's a very commercial, residential feeling area. The second area, the upside down skyscraper, starts off with a similar kind of residential vibe, but you take an elevator shaft, which, you go up the elevator shaft, but you go down to what was the top of the building, and you have much more of a sacred religious kind of vibe. You've got the big Buddha room, you've got a lot of support pillars, a lot of traditional architecture, big round doorways, stuff like that. At the very bottom of the map you have the sweatshop. This is the darkest part of the map by far. It's very claustrophobic, it's very maze-like, it has kind of an industrial vibe down there. But in contrast, the roof of the sweatshop building is very open, the sun's shining down on you. They really make you feel, at least in my opinion, like you escaped from just the bowels of the map when you get up there. So not only do the areas feel distinct in my opinion, but the power switch is in the sweatshop area of the map, which means players have to go to the very bottom, the bowels of the map, to really get the game going. But once you get to the very bottom and then you ascend up to the roof, there's a small jump you can make that brings you back to the first starting area, which basically makes the map into a bit of a loop, except it's more down and then back up again instead of left and right like most other maps are. There's also just the very bleak, dreary atmosphere of the map, which I know some people don't like, but I'm personally a fan of it. I think it just really goes to show how bad this apocalypse is that the characters are going through, and especially since the map's set in China and the previous map was set in Washington State or Oregon, it just goes to show that this is a worldwide thing they're dealing with. This isn't like a contained outbreak like all the maps were in World at War and Black Ops 1. This is everywhere. This is just what the world's like for these characters now. When you spawn in on Die Rise, you're presented with an interesting choice to have to make as a player. Like most other zombies maps, the players are presented with the choice on which way they want to take out of the spawn room once the game starts. In most maps, there's a pretty universally accepted correct path to take. For example, in Kino de Troten, everyone just takes the upstairs route. No one ever goes the other way. If you do go the other way, you'll usually just get some weird looks from the other people in the game, but, other than that, the choice really just boils down to left or right on most maps. These paths are usually very well balanced with one another in terms of how many weapons there are to buy going each path, how many doors you need to buy, how many rooms you need to go through, how many perks are on each side, so that, objectively speaking, there isn't a correct path to take or an objectively better path because they have the same amount of utilities both sides. This is not the case in Die Rise. In most other maps, they have the horizontal room to just have two paths that diverge and then will meet up at a separate point. On Die Rise, there isn't enough of that x-axis room to play with, so if they did have two branching paths that just went left and right, they'd probably meet up within a room or two. Obviously, this would pretty much just make the whole choice obsolete anyways, so what would be the point? You see, in Die Rise, this choice isn't so much left or right as it is up or down, higher or lower. You can go the more traditional way, where you buy the door in the spawn room and then just descend your way down to the bottom of the map, and then you reach the sweatshop. Along the way, you're probably going to buy some guns, you're probably going to build the trample steam, which we'll get to later. You might even pick up a free perk, which again, we'll get to later. Generally, by the time you reach the sweatshop, you're going to be pretty kitted out for early game. The alternative is that you can jump in the elevator in the spawn room. The elevator plummets you Tower of Terror style to the very bottom of the first building, which conveniently is just a short jump away from the sweatshop level, and only a single door away from the power switch room. This is a really interesting choice to make, and a lot of maps don't have something like this, where you can take the slow way to get to power, and you're probably going to get geared up along the way, or you can skip all that, and go right down there, get power on, but now you're in the most maze-like and claustrophobic part of the map, also the hardest part of the map to get out of, with nothing but your starting gear. This is a super fun choice to have to make, and it can make the start of your game feel drastically different based on which of the two options you pick. But what good is a Call of Duty Zombies map without the Call of Duty Zombies? And Die Rise introduces two new types to the game. Firstly is the Armored Zombie, which personally I'm really surprised it took Treyarch 3 whole games to introduce just an armored variant of the normal zombie, and it would take them another 3 games to bring them back as they wouldn't make another appearance until Black Ops Cold War. These zombies are very self-explanatory. They're simply normal zombies wearing the Chinese SDC armor that, multiplayer characters and campaign enemies would wear. Due to the armor that they're wearing, they have slightly more health than normal zombies, not a whole lot, but just a bit more. And they spawn in alongside normal zombies for the entirety of the game. These guys are omnipresent in Die Rise. The extra health can be very easily observed on round 1, where a normal zombie will take 1 knife to kill, the armored ones will take 2 to kill on round 1. These guys can come in helmeted and non-helmeted varieties, but I believe this is purely cosmetic as I can't tell any real health difference between them. The other special zombie is the Jumping Jack, which of the two on this map, these guys are the more iconic by far. They're a simple reskin of the Nova Crawlers from Black Ops 1 who have been on too many zombies maps to count. Personally, I believe the Jumping Jacks are the best iteration of the Nova Crawlers. Unlike all the other variants of Nova Crawlers, the Jumping Jacks get their own dedicated round, which basically means that they are the Hellhound equivalents on Die Rise. These guys are super quick and agile. They basically jump off the walls and the ceilings like a frickin' pinball going everywhere. They're very weak, they have below average damage and health, but their main thing is just how agile they are. They make them very hard to hit. The Jumping Jacks are basically Treyarch's answer to the question, what if we made the dogs go everywhere but the floor? They're on the walls and the ceiling, but they're very rarely actually on the floor. They also blow up and do a burst of electricity when you kill them, but this does very, very little damage. I don't think I've ever actually gone down to it, and I haven't really heard of anyone else going down to it as well. I didn't even know that the lightning actually, did damage until just now. I thought it was just an aesthetic thing that they blew up into lightning after getting killed, but no, it does damage, but you shouldn't have to worry about it unless you're already red screened when it does blow up right next to you. Otherwise, you'll be fine. As with other dog round equivalents, once you finish the round and kill the last Jumping Jack, they drop a max ammo for you to reward you for your troubles. But that's not the only reward you can get, because if you beat the round with having 100% accuracy, you don't miss a single bullet, the last Jumping Jack will also drop a free perk bottle, which is crucial on this map. As for actually getting the free perk bottle to drop, there's a couple ways you can do it. First of all, you could just be that good of a shot, but it's very unlikely you're going to hit all of your shots perfectly just because, again, these guys jump around a ton and they're super agile. They're just hard to hit normally, let alone trying to hit them all without missing once. Claymore mines and grenades don't count for accuracy, so if you've got your hands on those can help you take a couple out, but you're very, very unlikely to be able to kill the whole round with just those. Melee is another really popular choice because it doesn't detract from your accuracy when you miss. You could always use the starting knife you start with, but I don't recommend it because even on the first Jumping Jack round, which is usually round 5, 6, 7, around there, it's still super weak and it takes quite a few knives to, down the Jumping Jacks, so I don't recommend it. Instead, if you want to make quick work of the Jumping Jacks, I recommend either buying the Bowie knife, which is on the roof of the sweatshop building in one of the elevator shafts, or you can buy the Galva Knuckles at the bottom of the elevator shaft that leads down to the Buddha room. Both of those make super quick work of the Jumping Jacks, especially early game. Or you can beat the Jumping Jack round with the map's new buildable, the Trample Steam. The Trample Steam is built just a short jaunt away from the spawn room, just down this escalator and then down this drop right in front of the escalator. Trample Steam requires 4 parts to build. It needs a chicken wire fence piece, a motor, a bellows, and a flag, and all these can be found either inside of the spawn room or in the hallway to the left after leaving the spawn room through the first door. Once built, the Trample Steam becomes one of the key pieces to the success of Die Rise as a map, and one of the key pieces in the arsenal of any skilled zombies player. Like the turbine in transit before it, the Trample Steam can be placed on the floor anywhere in the map pretty much, and it takes a second to wind up. But once it does wind up, you find out that the Trample Steam has 2 main uses on Die Rise: killing zombies and mobility. The killing zombies part is pretty self-explanatory. Any zombies that walk over the Trample Steam while it's in its wound-up state will be flung, which instantly kills them, and after flinging a zombie, it almost immediately winds itself back up again, so it can do this really repeatedly in quick succession. This comes in particularly useful on the Jumping Jack zombies, and this is the easiest way to guarantee that you get that free perk bottle every round. Simply place one of these Trample Steams down and just train the Jumping Jacks around it and occasionally run at an angle where they'll jump onto it to try and catch you, and voila, a minute later you've got the free perk bottle, you've beaten the round, didn't even have to fire a single bullet. Or you could always just go camp in a corner somewhere and place one of these down for some extra protection. The other main use of the trample steam is for transportation, because not only does it fling zombies, but it also flings players too. This can be used to make some jumps between buildings that you normally wouldn't be able to do otherwise. That'll save you a ton of time from just traveling all the way down and then all the way back up again. You can cut all that traveling time out and just save yourself like a minute, minute and a half, or however long it would take you to get to where you're going to be jumping to. This is really fun to pull off, and it also just feels really cool, like it's something out of an action movie, just jumping between buildings like that. It's usually easy enough to tell which areas you can jump between buildings at, because they'll always have pink mattresses at the end, which pink mattresses are Die-Rise's way of kind of showing where you're supposed to land when you jump. Because not only are they a visual thing, because pink isn't a very common color in Call of Duty Zombies, but they also negate the fall damage you would take from landing over there. And this brings me to one of the biggest criticisms of Die-Rise as a map, which is the verticality, because both going up and going down have their own separate flaws. Traveling upwards in Die-Rise is really annoying a lot of the time, just because it's completely dependent on luck whether or not you even can go up. There's only a couple of spots on the map where you can just take a set of stairs up, because even in those locations where you can take a set of stairs, they're only ever to a higher part of the place in the map that you're already in. You can't use stairs to get from like the Buddha room up to the shopping center at the top of the map. It just doesn't work. To travel upwards into other areas of the map, you need to take an elevator. Well, not really take the elevator as much as you do ride on top of the elevator, like on the roof. On paper, this sounds like a great idea because you'd save the time of needing to take the stairs all the way up, especially between like the sweatshop and the roof, where there's a huge, just like 20 floors or whatever it feels like. You know, the elevator seems like it would save a ton of time, but in execution, this isn't really so much the case. Each of the map's 7 elevators all have at least 2, sometimes 3 floors that they stop on, and you'll never know what floor they're going to be stopped on when you need to use the elevator. Let's just say hypothetically, you're in the sweatshop and you want to make it up to the rooftop, but the elevator you want to take is already at the rooftop. You have to wait for the elevator to finish its stop up there, descend all the way back down to the sweatshop, do both of its stops in the sweatshop, and then ascend all the way back up to the roof. This happens once or twice is not a big deal, but you can get really unlucky games where you're waiting on the elevators for what feels like forever. You know, every time you want to take one, you've got to wait on one, and it just really can slow the momentum of the game to a crawl. This isn't just a transportation issue either, because the elevators also contain 2 major utilities for the players, the Perca-Cola machines and the Pack-a-Punch machine. These are all slightly randomized every single time you play the map, because Quick Revive, Speed Cola, and Who's Who, which is the new perk on Die-Rise, all spawn in the starting building every single time you play the game, in the exact same elevators every single time you play. On the other hand, Juggernog, Double Tap, Mule Kick, and the Pack-a-Punch machine all spawn in the elevators in the sweatshop/rooftop building, and their locations are shuffled between those 4 elevators every single game. So this means that not only will you be waiting to actually travel around the map efficiently, you'll also be waiting on getting your perks and pack-a-punching your guns, which again just adds more waiting time. Sometimes the perk will be on the floor you're on right now, but then as soon as you go up to buy it, the elevator leaves, and now you've got to wait for it to do its rotation again. And God help you if the pack-a-punch machine steals your gun, which I have heard that it can do sometimes, which I can imagine would just be the most infuriating thing that could happen on the map. I really like that some of the locations are randomized every game, because that's a feature I'm usually really happy to see in Zombies maps, because it can keep the games feeling fresh for longer, but I do feel like the way the elevators were implemented into Die-Rise is the map's biggest thorn in its side. I think a fix would be to not have the perks and Pack-a-Punch be in the elevators, just have them be scattered in the actual floors themselves, and have the elevators play like the elevators in a map like 5, where you can call them and use them whenever you want. There is an elevator key item that you can find and pick up, and then you can use it to call an elevator to whatever floor you're on, but it's only a band-aid solution to the problem. The key can only be used once before it breaks, and it takes up a part slot, so you can't build anything while you're carrying the key, otherwise you'd have to drop the key, go put the buildable part wherever you need it, and then come back and find the key again. It's just a bunch of unnecessary running around. This isn't a humongous problem, mind you, because there's only 2 buildables on Die-Rise, and you can get them both built like almost immediately if you want to get that shit done right away, but it's still annoying while you're getting set up. The elevator keys also spawn in a really out-of-the-way area of the map, which means they're really annoying to have to go back and get a new one every time you use it. The area in question being the little hallway at the bottom of where the freight elevator takes you from the spawn room, which, when are you ever down there except for like the first 30 seconds of the game, if you even go there at all. But going up is only half of traveling vertically, so let's break down the problem with going down, and that is fall damage. Granted, this isn't as all-encompassing as the slow elevators are, but it can still be really annoying to have to deal with. Sometimes when you're making drops on the map, there are the aforementioned pink elevators that negate the fall damage, and sometimes there aren't, so sometimes you'll take a little bit of fall damage when you make a jump. The fall damage you receive is usually pretty insignificant, but if you're already red screened or just otherwise low health and you make that jump, it can be enough damage to make you go down. This doesn't happen very frequently at all, but it's a very frustrating thing to deal with when it does happen. The other component of the downward traversal is that there's just a lot of places on Die Rise where you can just walk right off the edge of the map. This pretty much only happens if you're just not paying any attention, and when it does happen, it's usually pretty funny. An easy fix to the fall damage problem would just be to place PhD Flopper on the map as a perk, because one of its benefits, obviously, is that it negates fall damage. This would not only make the intended routes to travel safer, but it would also open up a whole bunch of other paths that you can't take normally just because the fall would be too great. If you had PhD, you could make tons of new jumps, and it would open up the map a ton more. Clearly somebody at Treyarch understood this and had the same line of reasoning, because PhD is in fact on Die Rise, but you just can't buy it. Obviously, I'm pretty sure you know this already, but if you're unaware, you can spot a PhD flopper machine down one of the hallways as you're dropping down the elevator shaft from the spawn room in one of the most infamous Call of Duty Zombies trolls ever. Even if you were to no-clip over to it, you still wouldn't be able to do anything because it can't be interacted with in any way, shape, or form. Something that Die Rise has that you can interact with, though, is plenty of great weapons, and in particular you have what I like to consider Black Ops 2's holy trinity of wall guns. These are, of course, the PDW-57, the SVU-AS, and the AN-94. Each of these wall guns on their own are top-tier weapons, and the fact that they're all on the same map together is just outstanding. The PDW is a really good gun early rounds, and it's also just a really good point gun, but it doesn't have a whole lot of ammo, but it only costs 1,000 points, and it's like right outside the spawn room pretty much, 2 doors away. The SVU is one of my favorite snipers in Zombies, period. It reminds me a lot of the Dragunov from Black Ops 1, and then the Draken from Black Ops 3, because of its high fire rate and crazy headshot potential. This one as well is only 1,000 points, it has a ton of ammo, and it has really good killing potential, and again, really good point potential due to the Scope Dollars perma perk, which makes headshots with snipers give you, I think, like 100 extra points per kill. It's nuts. The undisputed king of Call of Duty Zombies wall guns, though, has got to be the AN-94. It's only 1,200 points, and it is an absolute steal for that cheap. It's got really good damage, it's got a bunch of ammo in reserve, and it's also got a fast enough fire rate to kill the zombies, but not so fast a fire rate that you just blow through your ammo like with some guns. It's a very, very well-rounded gun, and one of my personal favorites in Zombies. The PDW is located right behind the escalator, right by the spawn room. The SVU is just one room after that, so those two guns are located back-to-back pretty much. And then the AN-94 is right after you leave the elevator shaft that takes you down to the Buddha room. It's before you go to the Buddha room and immediately after you leave the elevator shaft. And obviously these guns just all get even better when you pack-a-punch them, at which point you really don't even need to worry about getting anything else, you're pretty much set. There's also a new perk on the map, Who's Who, which is a really cool concept for a perk that'd be way better on basically any other map. Its usefulness is really hampered just because of the fact that it is exclusive only to Die Rise. Basically, when you go down, if you have Who's Who equipped, you will respawn as like a ghost version of yourself with nothing but your starting loadout. So a knife, M1911, and then 2 grenades. The challenge is that you have to revive your real body, which is still bleeding out on the floor somewhere where you went down. If you revive yourself with this terrible, terrible loadout, then you get to get revived and you keep everything you had on you when you went down, except for Who's Who. So it sounds great. If your normal body does manage to bleed out, then your Who's Who body will become your new normal body, and then the game just carries on as normal, but you pretty much have to just start from scratch at whatever round you were at when you went down. So Who's Who is basically just a more active version of Tombstone from Transit, which could even be seen when they brought Tombstone back to Black Ops Cold War. They integrated Who's Who systems into that. Who's Who is a lot more useful and just a lot more easy to use in co-op because you have other people to deal with the zombies and help defend you, but in solo you have to clutch up all by yourself on whatever round you went down on with nothing, with all the zombies honing in right on you. So it's like almost impossible, it can feel like. The reason why I say that Die Rise is just not the right map for Who's Who is because it's too cramped to really be able to put enough space between yourself and the zombies to clutch up safely. And it doesn't help that Die Rise has a bunch of what I like to call points of no return, which are basically spots, let's say you're dropping down from the spawn area at the bottom of the escalator to the trample steam area. You can't get back up there. You gotta find some other way to get back up there. There's a bunch of spots like that on Die Rise, and it effectively cuts down your place to train zombies and build space, even more so. Ironically, I think Tombstone would be a better perk on Die Rise, and Who's Who would be better on Transit because these perks basically have the opposite problems due to the maps that they're stuck on. Transit was too big to make effective use of Tombstone, but then Die Rise is too small to make effective use of Who's Who, so I think if they put the perks on opposite maps, They might even each other out, and they might actually become good. Who's Who's a really crappy perk, but its perk jingle is easily one of the best. But it's been 20 minutes now, and I've yet to mention Die Rise's most famous, in my opinion, best exclusive feature, the one and only Sliquifier, the buildable wonder weapon. The Sliquifier is the second and last buildable on the map, and whereas the trample steam was built right up near the top, up by the spawn room, the Sliquifier is built at the very bottom of the map in the bowels of the sweatshop. Much like the trample steam, the Sliquifier takes 4 parts to build. There are the mannequin's foot as the stock, just a bunch of wires and tubing and whatnot as the actual frame of the weapon, a fire extinguisher as the magazine / like cartridge of the gun, and then the handbrake of a motorcycle as the trigger. So this is a very just makeshift, thrown together kind of junky looking wonder weapon. And this is very in line with just the aesthetic that early Black Ops 2 zombies had. You can see that as well in transit with the jet gun, very thrown together looking wonder weapon. The gun shoots out a purple goo, slime, sliquid type of thing, and you can shoot the sliquid at zombies, or you can shoot it at the floor and it'll form a puddle. Any zombies that you shoot or that walk into the bubbling puddle on the floor, they'll start to slip and fall before exploding into a purple mist. Any zombies that are caught in the purple mist explosion, they'll explode into purple mist, and it creates like a chain reaction type thing. Running across the puddles as a player is like running across ice, and so it's really easy to accidentally slip off the map, so be careful when you're shooting this thing around, especially by open ledges. The Sliquifier also causes splash damage to players, but it's such a negligible amount that you don't have to worry about it unless you're just spamming it at your feet. Like, you'd actually have to be trying to down yourself to be any threat at all to yourself with it. The Sliquifier has all the hallmarks of a really good wonder weapon. It's fun to use, it's unique, it's really good at what it does, so good in fact that it was nerfed shortly after launch. Originally, you could chain the zombie explosions together infinitely, so if you were in the right positioning, you could go through an entire round with only one shot. And it has quite a bit of extra ammo to boot. You have 10 shots in the clip and then 40 in reserve. The Sliquifier stops killing at round 100, at which point it'll start to make crawlers, but that's not an issue for me because, 95% of players will never play that far into a zombies game, so it won't affect basically anyone, and even still, killing until round 100 is still nothing to scoff at. Die Rise also marks the return of the bank and fridge system from transit, and if you're unaware, the fridge allows you to store one weapon that'll carry between games played on transit, Die Rise, and buried, and the bank works the same way, except instead of one gun, you can bank upwards of 250,000 points that you can withdraw from whenever you want as long as you're playing on, again, transit, Die Rise, or buried. These are both located right next to each other, right past the jump from the hallway at the bottom of the elevator in the spawn room. It's a little hard to explain, but I'll be showing it on screen. But the bank in particular breaks every single map it's on, and especially here where you don't need to open any doors to get to it. You could make your game easy, so easy you could get everything you'd ever dream of getting on round 1 if you have the points in the bank. Now thankfully this system is optional, and personally I usually opt out of using it, but it's there if you just want a quick, easy, casual game, you don't want to worry about getting points in the early game. It's always there if you just want to kind of chill out, jump right into the actual zombie killing action. And that basically wraps up the main gameplay overview of Die Rise. Overall, I think it's mostly positive, but it does have a lot of annoying things that add up, and I feel like they keep it from reaching its full potential. Overall, Die Rise is a very easy map as well, just because of the abundance of tools and weapons you have at your disposal. It's casual enough a map that you can pick up and play it basically at any time whatsoever, but it's not so easy where it's mindless in my opinion, because there's enough to worry about, like not falling off the map and worrying about the jumping jack rounds. There's enough here to keep the gameplay loop interesting, and there's enough unique stuff particular to this map that makes it a map that I like going back to and playing in particular. Now I'm just going to talk about a bunch of little miscellaneous things about the map, good and bad, in no particular order. The Easter egg quest on Die Rise is one of the unique ones from Black Ops 2 that has 2 routes of going about completing the quest, whereas you can side with Dr. Richtofen or Dr. Maxis. Neither is particularly hard, but Richtofen's in specific is probably the easiest Easter egg in all of zombies, discounting like Vanguard. It's also the speedrunner's dream of an Easter egg, with the Richtofen route in particular's world record being down to below 3 minutes at this point, which is absolutely insane. Despite all this, the quest seems like it's one of the weaker ones in zombies overall, because a lot of the steps are just kind of nonsensical, really easy, just kind of going through the motions. There's a couple puzzles that you're probably going to use a guide to get through. There's nothing here that really stands out too much. I would give more in-depth thoughts on it, but you need 4 people to do the Easter egg, and I don't have 4 people to do the Easter egg with, so I've never done it before. So I can't really comment too much on it, but I mean, it doesn't exactly look like a top 5er, to say the least, you know? For me, the big thing is that 4-player requirement for the Easter egg, because I think that after Call of the Dead introduced the first solo Easter egg on the zombies, every map going forward should have included at least an alternate thing to do for solo with less steps, like Call of the Dead had. There should at least be something, because especially in Black Ops 2, which has some of the best Easter eggs ever, which can be done solo, it really only highlights how archaic Transit, Die Rise, and Buried less so, because Buried's Easter egg actually looks cool, but again, I haven't done any of them because I don't have 4 players. So maybe I'm not a real zombies player, maybe I'm not qualified to make this video, but I just think it's really bad game design that you can't even attempt the Easter egg without any less than 4 people. It just, again, seems outdated to me, especially after Black Ops 1 had a solo Easter egg in it. The Skybox on Die Rise is one of the best, and it really gets highlighted just because of the fact that you're in skyscrapers. The part of the skybox that's closer to the ground has got that kind of fog from transit. It's very smoggy, very polluted looking, but then you look up and you can see the sun shining through, you see some clouds, and then you look even further up, you see space, you see the moon, you see fragments of the broken earth, you see like a meteor shower going on. When I say meteor shower, I mean like meteors showering, basically almost hitting the buildings you're in. Like, it is a gorgeous, gorgeous skybox to look at. And again, I'm glad they went all out because you pay a lot more attention to it because it feels like it's way closer on Die Rise than a lot of the other skyboxes are on maps where you're, just on ground level. You're a lot closer to the heavens, so to speak. For its playable characters, Die Rise has the Victus crew, which is a good or a bad thing depending on who you ask because they're pretty divisive. Personally, I like them because Black Ops 2 was one of my first zombies games, and so they were my first zombies crews, so they've grown on me, but like, I'll be the first one to admit that they're pretty boring still in Die Rise. Like, they wouldn't really get fleshed out until the following map, Buried. They are like 10 times better even in Buried, and then even better again in Black Ops 4 when they come back, but here, the only one who I really think is interesting is Stuhlinger. The other characters don't have a whole lot going on yet, Speaking of Stuhlinger, he can hear the zombies talking to him on the map, which, take a listen. This is exclusive to him on this map because, spoiler alert, but he ate zombie flesh, so he can hear the zombie talking, and it's a really cool touch at first. It's cool, but when you spend the whole game listening to these noises, it can get a little bit grating after a while. Thankfully, after a while though, they are pretty easy to just kind of tune out, so you don't really mind after a while. And it goes a long way to kind of showing you what Stuhlinger has been going through this whole time, assuming he was hearing these noises on Transit and then again in Buried. And I want you to go back like 20 seconds and then rewatch that bit again and then take a shot every single time I say after a while, because I realize now I said it way too many times. Because of how bright Die Rise is compared to basically all of the other zombies maps in Black Ops 2, especially when you're on the roof, this is the best place to get a look at the Black Ops 2 Victus map Pack-a-Punch camo. It's a shiny metallic blue with some gold in there, and I think it looks really good on Die Rise where it's nice and sunny, but I think it really falls flat on Buried and Transit. Transit, especially with the fog, it just kind of looks like a blur on your gun. But Buried is just a little too dark to really make out what the camo is. But here, I think it looks really good. The Easter egg song on Die Rise is We All Fall Down by Clark S. Nova, and it's one of my personal least favorites in all of zombies. It can be activated by interacting with 3 teddy bears throughout the map. One is in the SVU wall by room, one is in the Buddha room, and then one is in the power room. And again, I just don't really like the song very much. It's weird that I don't like it though, because I like Nova's other Easter egg songs for zombies, particularly I really like Carry On from Transit, but I don't know, something about this one just doesn't click with me at all. Die Rise has an intro cutscene, and it's the first map to have one since Black Ops 1's Call of the Dead, and it's in a really cool comic book style, which I really like. It's got some really good voice acting from all the voice actors, and it's got one of the first implications of the cycle in zombies, which I believe the first was in Shangri-La. I think this might have been the second one that I know of. It's not my personal favorite intro. Obviously, maps like Origins, Mob of the Dead, Shadows, Classified, they all have much better intros, but this gets the job done, and it's solid enough. And I feel it's also worth noting because every map after Die Rise would have an intro as well, so Die Rise really got the ball rolling with them getting intros on every single zombies map, so I think that's neat. There's only 3 mystery box spots on Die Rise, which isn't that big of a deal breaker because out of every Black Ops 2 map, Die Rise is the one where the mystery box is the least important in my opinion, but it's still really weird, especially because 2 of them are like 3 seconds apart from each other. Like, one mystery box spot is behind this little food court counter right below the SVU room, and then another one is just down the slide right across from the other box spot, which, again, I don't know, they're too close, I feel. Because it's not like a map like Kino where the mystery boxes are all like 5 seconds apart from each other, but there's like 8 or 9 boxes on that map. There's 3, and 2 of them are right here. I feel like at the very least they could have put one down in like the Buddha room or the sweatshop, because other than that, the only other one is on the roof, so they're all up right at the top. And I feel like having one down the lower levels of the map would just have been a really good idea. Especially because the Buddha room in particular is like the go-to training spot on Die Rise, so it would just make sense to have a mystery box spot at least somewhere near there. Die Rise is seriously missing in the lore department, which is super important when it comes to zombies. There's basically nothing explicitly spelled out for the players, which is fine, but there's nothing even hinted at either. The only lore that I am aware of is there's 5 messages you can pick up from the different TVs around the map that are just miscellaneous, just anecdotal messages from different survivors, kind of showing you what's going on. And that's basically it. There's nothing pertaining to Die Rise in particular, why these buildings in particular are so special, and why Richtof and Maxis need us to activate a tower here, as opposed to anywhere else in the world. The good thing about them leaving this so open with nothing really spelt out is that it gives players a lot of room to theorize and come up with their own answers, but the downside is that Die Rise feels like, in my opinion, one of the least significant zombies maps storyline-wise. Because Treyarch themselves didn't even think it was important enough to flesh out what happened here until years further down the line. Even then, there's barely anything we know about Die Rise. As far as I'm aware, the only ever elaboration we got for Die Rise came in Alpha Omega, where on a map of Broken Arrow facilities throughout the world, Die Rise was marked as one, which, cool, but that doesn't really tell us anything else other than, oh, it was a Broken Arrow facility. It personally just doesn't feel like a very satisfying answer to me, and I can't even give Die Rise any credit for it because, again, that was retconned in 5 years later in Alpha Omega. Maybe even 6 years later, whenever Alpha Omega came out, 2018, 2019. Point is, it was way down the line, so I'm not going to give Die Rise a pat on the back for what another map did. So is Die Rise one of the worst maps, if not the worst map ever made for Call of Duty Zombies? Absolutely not. It obviously has its ups and downs, which, sorry, not sorry, but I think the good outweighs the bad. It all evens out to make Die Rise a really fun zombies map in my opinion. It's a super easy map just due to how many good weapons there are, the Sliquifier, how easy it is to get all the perks, the trample steam, so it's a great casual map to play with other people. It's me and my friends. It's one of our go-to maps to play whenever we just want a casual zombies map to play and not really have to think too hard about it. Granted, there's only 3 of us, so we never do the Easter egg, but it's still a really fun, casual time. Its setting of just downtown Shanghai, you're on a rooftop, you're in tall buildings, is so unique for zombies. There's literally nothing else like it, and the only thing that ever came close was Maurer Toten's rooftop sections, and that was 8.5 years later. Obviously the map's not perfect though, the big thing is just the waiting on the elevators. Again, if you got a bad game, you'll be waiting for 20-30 minutes or so. It just adds up, and it's not fun at all. I can't defend it. Fall damage is another one, but that problem just kind of goes away as you get better at playing the map, and after a while, you don't even think about it anymore. Considering all the good and all the bad, I have to rank Die Rise like a 7.5, 8 out of 10. It's objectively not a top-tier zombies map, but it's still one of my personal favorites. It's one of the maps that I have the most fun on, and at the end of the day, isn't that what's most important? If you're listening to this right now, it means you made it to the very end of the video, and thank you very much for watching. It means a whole lot. If you want to show your support, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe for more content, and it, again, really means a lot. This is basically going to be the new Call of Duty Zombies retrospective, which for those of you who were around when I posted those are basically how I got my first 500 subs or so, was posting those Zombies retrospectives, where I went through Call of Duty World at War, and then the first 2 maps of Black Ops 1, I only did Kino and 5, and then Ascension burnt me out because Ascension's not that great. Obviously, I won't be continuing in map release order anymore, but I will be just doing the maps that I want to talk about because I feel like that'd be a good way to help kind of avoid burnout, which is what happened with the original retrospective, is I hit Ascension and I just got burnt out with the weekly videos. It'll be more fun for me because I'll get to talk about the maps I'd like to talk about the most, and then it'll be more fun for you guys, I hope, because you won't really be expecting what maps I'm going to be talking about when I talk about them. It'll be more of a surprise. At least, I hope that's what happens. I'm going to try and get one of these out roughly once a month, maybe more, once my semester ends and I'll have more time to make videos, but for now, expect one of these once a month. And once again, thank you for watching, peace out, God bless, I'll catch you guys later.
Yeah, cause I got it like that, flow so smooth like I got it on tap. Yeah, and I'ma say it be a good night while I'm on my Yingling, while I'm drinking Bud Light. Can you get it when you miss me?